So if you're an interior designer, you definitely know that amazing feeling of cracking a really tough space planning puzzle. But what happens when you leave the classroom behind and step into the real world? Where the puzzles aren't just bigger, they're a whole different game. Today, we're going to talk about bridging that gap and leveling up your skills from those academic exercises to the massive, complex challenges you'll face in your career.
In school, you probably got really good at projects around this size, right? 4,000 square feet. And that's a huge achievement. It's the kind of space where you learn all the fundamentals of good design. You're comfortable here. But what happens when that comfort zone just completely vanishes?
Imagine you walk into that big client meeting, they unroll the blueprints, and that scale you've totally mastered is suddenly, well, it's gone. The challenge you're facing is way beyond just arranging a few rooms.
Now you're staring at a single floor plate that's 25,000 square feet. Yeah, this isn't just a bigger version of what you already know. This is a different beast entirely. We're talking about a typical floor in a new office building that can be 5, maybe 6 times larger than anything you worked on in school. The complexity just explodes, and frankly, your old methods aren't going to cut it anymore.
Okay, so this is where your professional journey really kicks into high gear. We're moving past those foundational skills to start tackling the new layers of complexity that just come with this kind of scale.
The very first thing to get your head around is that size is only one piece of the puzzle. As these projects get bigger, you're not just dealing with more space. You're dealing with more departments, more functions, and this tangled web of relationships between them all. This is what we call programmatic complexity. It's the crazy puzzle of workflows, how visitors move through the space, and all the specialized equipment. And honestly, it's that complexity, even more than the square footage, that's the real challenge here.
So, when you're looking at a massive floor plan that has to fit hundreds of people from a dozen different departments, it is so easy to just get lost in all the little details. So, the big question is, how do you manage all that complexity without getting totally overwhelmed? You've heard this saying, right? It perfectly captures the problem. If you jump right in and try to place every single desk and every single chair from the very beginning, you're going to be paralyzed. The sheer number of individual things makes it pretty much impossible to see the bigger picture.
The solution is to completely change how you think. You have to create programs within programs. So instead of getting bogged down planning for, say, 156 individuals, you start by planning for the 14 departments that they all belong to. You basically zoom out. And all of a sudden, you're treating entire departments just like you used to treat individual rooms. It makes the problem so much more manageable.
And this is what that zoomed-out thinking actually looks like when you put it on paper. Over on the left, you've got this abstract relationship diagram, just mapping out which departments need to be near each other. Then on the right, you see how that abstract map turns into a concrete bubble diagram. It's a zoning plan that's laid out on the actual floor plate. You're creating the forest first, long before you start planting any of the individual trees.
All right, you've got your zones. Now what? What tools do you actually use to fill them in? Well, in the modern office, especially at this kind of scale, there's one tool that absolutely dominates: systems furniture.
Now, systems furniture is brilliant for a lot of reasons. It gives you incredible flexibility to reconfigure things down the road. It's a lifesaver for managing all the wiring a modern office needs, and it can really help people collaborate. But, and trust me, it's a big but, it pretty much fails when you need serious acoustic privacy, document security, or that traditional sense of prestige that comes with a private office. So the answer isn't to go all in on one or the other. The real industry standard is a hybrid approach. You use that great open-plan systems furniture for workstations and collaborative areas, but then you use conventional, hard-walled construction for things like executive offices, legal departments, or any conference room that needs real privacy and security. It's the best of both worlds.
A lot of your work is probably going to happen in what's called a speculative office building. Basically, these are built to be super flexible, with modular systems for everything from the ceiling grid to the HVAC, so they can house all sorts of tenants over the years. As a designer, your job is to become a master of these standardized systems, so you can bend them to fit your client's unique needs.
So far, we've mostly talked about space in 2, maybe 3 dimensions. But if you really want to level up your skills, you have to start thinking in a 4th dimension, time. And you have to recognize that you are not planning this alone.
This might be one of the toughest parts of the job. Clients are usually focused on solving their current problems, which can make it really hard for them to plan for future growth. Your role as the designer is to be their guide, to help them see where their company is headed, so you can create a space that actually adapts with them, not just one that works for them today.
And then, what happens when your client takes over multiple floors? The complexity just leaps up again. Now you need something like a stacking diagram, which you see here, to plan the vertical relationships between departments. And at this point, the project isn't just about interior design anymore. It really becomes an architectural challenge, and that demands some deep collaboration.
And this brings up such a crucial point. Way too often, the interior designer gets brought into the project late in the game. But when architects and interior designers can collaborate from the very beginning, integrating all that knowledge about both the building's shell and how it needs to function on the inside, the result is, quite simply, a better building. Every single time.
So what does all this add up to? Well, it's more than just a list of techniques. It's really about developing a much more sophisticated problem-solving mindset, one that's going to serve you for your entire career.
So here's your checklist to take with you. First, get used to thinking in zones, not just rooms, as a way to manage that complexity. Second, master that hybrid model of open systems and private offices. Third, always plan for that fourth dimension, future growth. And finally, you have to embrace collaboration with other disciplines, especially architects. These aren't just skills for your next project. They are adaptable, lifelong tools for a profession that is constantly changing.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. As the buildings we design and the companies inside them become more and more integrated and complex, does that traditional separation between designing the shell and designing the interior, does it even make sense anymore? That's a question that's really going to shape the future of our profession.